You've probably never heard of an employee as overzealous as me, someone ready to go beyond their job description to help colleagues and even step in for the boss when things get backed up. But everything changed when I got caught and was told to stick to my assigned tasks. From being the hero, I became the one being punished. Will I continue to stand firm with my not my job principle, or is there more to this story than meets the eye? Recently, I received feedback that I will never forget. After all the efforts to prove my value, I was bluntly turned down for a promotion, and the reason given caught me off guard. My boss said that I get distracted too easily and lack focus on my main job, something I never expected to be the reason for not getting promoted. You need to follow instructions and stop trying to be a hero, was the message that made me rethink the way I had been working all this time. At first, I thought it was just a misunderstanding, a simple criticism. But when I reflected on it, I couldn't deny one thing. Maybe I had done something wrong. My job was pretty clear and had specific tasks, but every time I helped other departments or took on work outside my scope, I realized it might have caused misunderstandings. Looking back, I realized I'd been doing this too much, perhaps because I wanted to help colleagues, to show my worth, or simply to keep things running smoothly. I didn't realize that these actions, while well-intended, could have unintended consequences. Since joining the company, I noticed that everyone was often busy, and sometimes work would get backed up. That's when I would roll up my sleeves and help out, even if it wasn't my job. This happened often, as I would step in for the boss during urgent situations or work extra hours to finish tasks that others couldn't complete. The boss and colleagues appreciated it, even praised me for my proactive attitude and responsibility. However, I never realized that those actions might have led to misunderstandings, making others feel like I was overstepping my bounds. In fact, I only did what I thought would help the company, and I always felt like I was contributing to the bigger picture. But now, I realized that these actions may have gone beyond the limits of my role. I did too much, not because I was forced to, but because I felt it was the right thing to do. But apparently, the company and my superiors didn't agree with my approach. They wanted me to stick to my assigned tasks and not overstep. They even thought I was diluting my main responsibilities and couldn't manage them properly. After receiving this feedback, I began to feel like I was being boxed in by a rigid work model I hadn't considered before. What I wanted was to do my job well, and sometimes helping out other departments made everything flow more smoothly. But it seems I was mistaken to think that others would appreciate my enthusiasm. This situation not only left me feeling drained, but also forced me to face a bigger problem. How could I balance doing my job well without violating the company's principles? Now, I realize that perhaps I focused too much on trying to be the hero instead of simply doing my assigned job well. My enthusiasm may not always be appreciated, and I don't know if there's a way to do my job well while helping my colleagues without facing criticism anymore. After receiving feedback from my superiors, I couldn't stop thinking about the way I had been working all this time. I couldn't deny that I had always tried my best, but perhaps it was time to accept the reality that overextending myself might not be the right approach in this environment. Still, I couldn't just stop immediately, because I felt that the company always needed people who were willing to support each other during tough times. One of the times I worked outside my job description happened on a particularly stressful day. At that moment, the receiving department was facing a significant bottleneck. Some orders were delayed, and the receiving staff couldn't keep up. I saw the confusion on my colleagues' faces and just couldn't sit idly by. They asked for help, but the situation wasn't within my job scope. However, I thought that if I didn't step in, everything would be delayed even more, and it would negatively affect the company. Without thinking too much, I walked over to the receiving department and began helping step by step, from reorganizing the orders to assigning tasks to the remaining staff. Honestly, I felt very proud of myself for helping my colleagues and getting that department back on track. But once things were stabilized, I realized that my boss was standing at the door, staring at me. His face showed no expression, and I immediately felt that something was wrong. The next day, I received a call from my boss. This time, it wasn't a casual check-in or a simple inquiry about work. It was a serious conversation directly addressing what I had done. He told me that I should never interfere with the work of another department, no matter how urgent the situation. This surprised me because, in the past, I had always been encouraged to help. But now, everything had changed. He explained that I had overstepped my boundaries and didn't follow the work instructions. At that moment, I felt stuck between two choices. Continue doing what I had been doing, helping my colleagues when needed, or respecting the rules and avoiding tasks that weren't part of my job. I couldn't stop wondering if I had made a mistake. I thought I was just helping out and ensuring the company ran smoothly, but it seemed that my approach wasn't being appreciated anymore. A sense of disappointment started to creep in as I questioned whether my efforts to do well were actually the right thing to do. A part of me wanted to keep doing good things and helping those around me, but another part of me felt that constantly working outside my main duties wasn't right. I couldn't shake the internal conflict I was feeling. How could I continue to help my colleagues without facing criticism? Could I keep up this mindset, or would I have to accept a new approach to my work? After the call from my boss, I felt like my mind was in turmoil. The feeling of being boxed into a work role I couldn't escape made me confused. Before, I had always been proud of my ability to help others, to get things done quickly and flexibly. But now, I had to face the reality that I was supposed to stick to my assigned tasks and not interfere with other departments, no matter how urgent the situation. It felt like I was standing at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. Every day, I tried harder to focus on my own work, but I still couldn't shake the uneasy feeling when I saw my colleagues struggling with their tasks. One morning as I walked into the office, I heard the usual noise from the receiving department. They were facing yet another bottleneck with the backlog of goods. Once again, I found myself faced with a difficult decision. It was as if there was a voice inside me urging me to step in and help. This time, I told myself I couldn't continue as I had before. I couldn't let myself become the hero again, trying to fix everything when it wasn't my responsibility. However, I still couldn't help but look back and feel a tinge of regret. After all, in the past I had been able to resolve things quickly, and there was a sense of pride when I saw the job done well. And then, almost instinctively, I started walking toward the receiving department. I tried to convince myself that it wasn't my job, that I needed to stick to my responsibilities. But as I got closer to the area, I couldn't hold back any longer. I paused for a moment, took a deep breath, and then decided to go ahead. When I walked in, my colleagues were surprised to see me, but I could tell they felt relieved that someone was there to help. Once I got started, I realized I had made a mistake. I began assigning tasks to others, guiding them on how to handle the backlog of orders and organizing things more efficiently. The familiar feeling of being helpful returned, but I was also very aware that I was doing something I shouldn't be. I knew this help could only last for a short time before I would face consequences. Once the situation had been temporarily stabilized, I stepped back and returned to my own work. But I couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty about what I had just done. A part of me felt good for having helped my colleagues, but another part felt guilty for going against what my boss had asked. I began to question whether I had broken the rules, or if I was simply trying to hold on to what I believed was the right way to work. The next day, I received an official reminder from the HR department. While I wasn't punished or given any formal disciplinary action, I could sense the seriousness in the warning. It was a clear sign that I needed to change. I began to realize that the company wanted me to return to what they thought was the correct approach, and I had to find a way to live within the boundaries of my role without trying to take on too many things at once. But could I do that and still hold on to my belief in how things should be done? A week after the official reminder from HR, I began to feel a noticeable shift in my work. Although I tried to focus more on my assigned tasks, every time I saw a colleague struggling, I felt an uneasy urge I couldn't explain. Part of me wanted to stick to my principles, but another part urged me to act. It was like an internal battle that kept me from separating from the feeling that I could do better, that I could help people. But I also knew that if I continued like this, I would end up in the same situation again, and things could get even worse. The incident happened when the receiving department faced a major bottleneck. The volume of goods needing processing was far beyond the capacity of just one person. I knew they wouldn't be able to finish the job by the end of the day, and this would affect the entire production process. As soon as I walked into the office, I could hear the frantic noise from that department. The team was trying to get through the pile of work, but it seemed like all their efforts were in vain. At that moment, I was once again faced with two choices. Should I help or not? I knew that I wasn't supposed to interfere with another department's work as per my boss's instructions, but I couldn't ignore the chaos unfolding. The urge to act inside me was so strong that I couldn't stop thinking about it. If I didn't help, the work wouldn't be completed on time, and the entire company could face major issues. I decided to step in and ask what I could do to assist. As I approached the receiving department, a few colleagues turned to look at me, their expressions a mix of surprise and concern. Some let out a sigh of relief, while others seemed anxious knowing that I was once again stepping outside of my assigned role. I could feel the pressure mounting, but I couldn't just stand by and let the chaos continue. I began directing everyone on how to reorganize the goods and distribute the work more efficiently, prioritizing the most urgent orders first. While I was working, I could sense a few colleagues' gazes. They weren't exactly thrilled that I was helping, but more concerned that I was crossing the line again. Even so, I kept working with everything I had. When things started to stabilize, I felt relieved, but also anxious. I knew I couldn't keep acting like this forever, but I also couldn't ignore what was happening right in front of me. After finishing the work, I returned to my station, but my mind was far from at ease. I began to question whether helping my colleagues was really wrong, or if I was simply trying to do what I thought was best for the company. I couldn't deny that my actions had helped the receiving department finish on time, but did that mean I violated company policy? Should I continue helping those around me, or just stick to my own role? Everything was starting to blur, and I felt like I was being pushed into a difficult situation I couldn't escape from. The next day, as I sat in my office, still pondering everything that had happened, I heard hurried footsteps in the hallway. At first, I didn't pay much attention, but then the door to my office opened, and my manager walked in, looking tense. He stared at me for a long moment before sitting down across from me and sighing. The atmosphere was strange, and I could tell he was worried about something, though I couldn't anticipate what it was. "You did well yesterday," he started, his voice calm, but I could sense the underlying dissatisfaction in it. "But you need to understand, this isn't the way we operate." Those words were a shock to me. I had helped the receiving department, and everything had stabilized, but now I was hearing this. I nodded silently, trying to collect my thoughts before responding. "You need to understand that everyone has their role," he continued. "If you keep doing their work, your own responsibilities will get neglected. We need a team that works according to the process, not spontaneous actions like that." I felt cornered. What he was saying wasn't wrong, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that I was simply helping the people around me. If I hadn't stepped in yesterday, the receiving department wouldn't have finished their work on time. And when I saw the worry on my colleagues' faces, I knew I had done the right thing. But was my right really in line with the company's rules? So, what should I do? I couldn't stay silent any longer, and the question came out naturally. If I don't help when it's needed, will the company fall behind? My manager stared at me for a moment before sighing deeply. "You can't just solve every problem like that. Don't think you can do everything. We need to work according to a process, and that takes time to adjust to." While I understood that he was trying to remind me of my role within the company, I still felt a sense of disappointment. I didn't want to be the person who only followed orders, but I also couldn't deny that not following the processes could lead to unpredictable consequences. What troubled me even more was the change in the attitude of those around me. In the past, when I helped, I received compliments and thanks. But now, when I didn't stick strictly to the company's instructions, I was facing reminders and even warnings. I began to question whether I should continue acting according to what I felt was right. As my manager stood up and left the room, I remained sitting there, the discomfort lingering in my chest. I understood that the company wanted me to follow the process, but I couldn't stop thinking about whether I could maintain my role while still keeping the passion for helping others. The question of what was right or wrong haunted me, and I wasn't sure if I would find the answer anytime soon.